Blender will never be industry standard. I've seen that comment thousands of times, and I believed it. I made a whole video about it last year. And for good reason, because studios can't just throw away 20 years of pipeline development. Blender gets better every year, but it doesn't matter. But that just changed. At BlenderCon this year, one of the largest visual effects studios in the world, Framestore, announced that they are using Blender on multi-million-dollar productions. Specifically, it was used to help create the dragons in the live-action How to Train Your Dragon. That flips the question entirely. It's no longer, why doesn't the industry use Blender, but instead, as Framestore's Stefan Meyer put it,
we use Blender, but why do we use Blender? Or the question is, why should we not use Blender?
So what changed? Why did studios ignore Blender for so long? And what finally made them stop? To answer that question, we need to look at Blender not from the perspective of an indie artist, but from the perspective of a studio. And luckily for us, Framestore explained exactly that.
Blender is extremely versatile. So we have the entire package in one software where we can work from the beginning to the end.
And if you want to develop the skills to be able to take advantage of this opportunity, today's sponsor, CG Boost, is running a huge sale on all their courses right now. So check them out, link in the description. Now, this is really interesting because what you hear all the time is that Blender is a jack of all trades, master of none, and that's why it's ignored by studios. But here, Framestore is saying that's its greatest strength, that Blender is their industry standard modeling, rigging, and rendering program. Not that they use it exclusively for those tasks, but rather it's capable enough to work alongside other programs. I mean, we can't expect studios to discard all their programs and just use Blender. That's completely unrealistic. Instead, Blender needs to mesh with other programs, and that has been the catching point for years. This is where things get really interesting, because throughout the rest of this video, Stefan goes through how they integrate Blender into their pre-existing pipeline, which is key. Blender will never replace every tool, but if it can work well with the tools that are already out there, then it has a chance. Because if we were looking at this from the studio perspective, Blender is free, which would save a ton of money on professional licensing. There is a huge talent pool of up-and-coming Blender artists, which is great for hiring, and it's a capable software in the hands of developers who really care about growing it, which is why it's outstripping Autodesk in many ways, even though in 2023, Blender only earned $3 million compared to Autodesk's $5 billion. So if Blender could integrate, that's a pretty sweet deal for studios, but it can't be fully integrated yet. Now, I say that with a caveat. Framestore is able to use it. The production team of Flow use it as their primary program and won an Oscar, so it can be done, but its integration isn't great. But the Blender 5.x series is poised to remove every barrier between Blender and integration, which could lead to a fundamental shift in industry standard software. And it's going to do this through USD. This is Sir Wade Neistat. He has an awesome channel on 3D, and a little over 2 years ago, he did a video on USD. He showed how it could let artists from around the world work on the same project in different programs at the same time with live updates. Now, it took me a little while to process that, but essentially, you could have a team of artists from around the world working on whatever program they choose, all working on different assets within the same file. USD uses a layering system, so one person can be texturing in Substance Painter, while 2 are building out an environment in Unreal, 3 are modeling in Blender, and 4 are animating in Maya, all on the same file. And each person could see the changes that the other artists are making in real time, so there would be no friction, no bottlenecks. If Blender could make an integration like this, program of choice wouldn't matter. Hiring would be based purely on artistic strength, but developing those skills that get you hired is really hard, which is where today's sponsor, CG Boost, comes in. They offer high-quality courses that accelerate your learning curve and take you from beginner to pro. I've personally gone through many of them, and it felt like that they condensed years of learning into simple, digestible lessons that you could complete in a week. It's wild. And you can really tell that the instructors are passionate about what they are teaching. They tackle big subjects that will transform your skill set and teach proven workflows that will be easy to remember because of the well thought out exercises. It doesn't feel like there's a wasted second. I took the Master Compositing course over the summer, and Even after the first 2 hours, I understood what each node did and was able to combine them in interesting new ways. And the rest of the course only furthered my understanding with practical examples that really grew me as an artist. And these skills build on each other. If you've taken the Master Cinematic Storytelling course, which gives a ton of really great insight and theory into cinematography, then the Master Compositing course just shows you how to actually put that into practice with these nodes inside of the compositor. And until October 31st, all courses are 30% off, and the bundles are 15% off if you use code HBD25. This is a huge sale, and these courses are already a great deal at full price, so make sure you check them out, link in the description. Now let's get back to the video. That perfect USD integration that we were just talking about might be closer than you think. Now, I don't want to get your hopes up and say that Blender will frictionlessly integrate with every other program within a month, because that's just unreasonable. And I'm sure there will be a lot of unforeseen issues handled by people that are a lot smarter than me. But here's what we know. Wade's demonstration was run through NVIDIA Omniverse, which is a connective add-on that allows Blender to manipulate USD files. And this is something I was really excited about. But it's owned by NVIDIA, and as such is heavily restricted to NVIDIA infrastructure, like needing graphics RTX cards to really be able to run, which makes it a really poor long-term solution. But Blender 5.0 is continuing to take steps towards natively integrating USD. Now, you may have commented that Blender already supports USD, which is absolutely correct. It added import-export support in Blender 2.8, but it's lacking full editability, which is why it currently cannot integrate like Wade showed with Omniverse. Now, this would be a complex solution. It wouldn't just be one change, but rather a fundamental shift in how Blender works with USD files. But if that were to happen, then the biggest drawback keeping Blender out of the industry would be entirely removed. There would be no barrier to entry, which is a future I would be very happy to be moving toward. But remember, Framestore is using Blender now. They're not just banking on some future USD integration. If you go and watch the full presentation, Stefan specifically says that they use the Alembic file format. So to say that the main reason for their switch was this future promise of USD integration would be blatantly misleading. Instead, the reason why USD is important is because while Framestore uses Alembic, there are many studios who would be much more open to the possibility of integrating Blender if it could mesh seamlessly with their USD pipeline. So if that's not the reason why Framestore is using Blender, what is? How are they making it work in their pipeline? Well, there are a few things that they are doing to make it possible to use Blender at the highest level of production. Firstly, they aren't working with default Blender. Instead, they have a set of predefined templates that they use for whatever shot they're trying to create. This is a genius way of getting Blender to work at the highest level of production. Robin Squares made a great breakdown of how to use render passes in Blender. I'll link that in the description if you want to learn more about it. But essentially, this is the method that every large production uses to render. And leveraging Blender to do so also segments the data so that you can export smaller amounts of it to use elsewhere, which is yet another way to make it easier to transfer data outside of Blender. So what can you do? Well, now is a great time to be a Blender artist. And while there is a lot of uncertainty about AI and how it will affect 3D artists, if Blender is able to ascend to the highest level of production, then that will help with job security and reinvestment back into its development. The biggest skill in helping to take advantage of this new opportunity is ironically being able to work with programs outside of Blender. Having a knowledge of them and being able to mesh seamlessly into a pre-existing workflow will elevate all the other skills in your skill set.